Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. It is a rainy day here in Portland, Oregon. It is also spring break. And so there are 5 other adult-sized people in my house. There may be background noise as a result of that. I'm hiding in my own bedroom for that reason. It's too rainy to film out in the garden today. I'd hope to show you guys around a little bit what I'm doing, even though it's quite a mess because we have been ripping up and tearing down things and making some big changes. And I wanted to show that in process, but not today because it's cold and rainy. I want to take a few minutes and talk about the concept of resilience in permaculture. I made a video on this subject years ago, and I use that term a lot on this channel and on my Facebook page, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's important that we kind of examine what resilience really is and our relationship with that concept and that term, because I think over the last number of years, the way that we view the concept of resilience and how it impacts our lives has kind of shifted, and the connotations of that term have shifted, particularly when we're using it in conjunction with the term abundance, and we're using it as it applies to vulnerable communities. Okay, so what is resilience? I have an old video you can check out. Resilience is essentially our bounce back factor, and it is a really key concept in permaculture. We want to view resilience as an intrinsic part of our design. We want to plan for how well we as individuals, our garden, our whole community bounces back from adverse events. It could be weather, it could be economic crises, it could be illness and injury. How much do we design into our system to give us that wiggle room, to give us that elasticity to help us recover quickly from adverse events? So resilience sounds like a positive thing, right? And planning for resilience in a way that not only anticipates when things will go well and you're planning for maximum yields, but also anticipates when things do not go well, how you tolerate the rough times, right? How you get through hard times, how you persist in a state of disequilibrium, in a state of adversity, but also how you recover as quick as possible to get back to your baseline, to be able to function in the optimal range of your system. And so, we talk a lot about resiliency in permaculture because it's so critical to have a design that can handle the normal things that come up in, the period of our life or within our communities. There are going to be hard times. There's going to be weather events. There's going to be illness. I mean, if nothing, the last several years have taught us there's political unrest, there's economic unrest, there's illness, there are climate and weather related events that we cannot plan for when they will hit us, but we can plan for how we will best recover from them when they inevitably do hit us. So that's what resilience is. Sounds really positive, sounds like an intelligent thing to build into your system, that elasticity, that bounce back factor. So what are the negatives here? Why is it that term has taken on, maybe a little bit more dark or ominous of a connotation over the last number of years? First off, let's look at what happens when you have too little resilience built into your system. Now, some examples of resilience really quickly, in a garden can look like having a system where it doesn't need a very high level of maintenance from the gardener, so that if you have illness or injury, for example, I've broken both my legs, and it means that during those times in the garden, especially when I was on crutches or using or using a knee scooter, that I couldn't get out into the garden to access everything. And that period of recovery meant that I had to let things go in the garden, and weeds kind of proliferated and things didn't get pruned. Resilience is how quickly can my garden recover? How is my garden design crafted in such a way that my garden can tolerate periods of neglect and periods where it is out of sync in its relationship with me, and then quickly be able to be returned to its optimal performing state, right? So that's one example. So why does permaculture push resilience? Well, what happens if you have too little of it? Both in terms of like your own mindset and in terms of your design for your garden or your community or your life. If you have too little resilience, then I think it can become very easy to get disillusioned, because the normal adverse things that happen to you in life feel really big, because it takes a huge amount of, not to borrow terms from chemistry, but like activation energy to begin to have that process of recovery, right? It takes too much to jumpstart the recovery. And when your reserves are really low, you cannot summon up what it takes to get all the way back up to your starting point. And so if you have too little resilience, either in your system design or in your mindset, it means that like you don't ever quite fully recover, or it takes a huge draining, demoralizing amount of energy in order to recover. And so you find that your system is ever kind of decreasing in quality and in output, right? And requiring this initial huge amount of energy you may not have in order to get back to where you were. And that can be really heartbreaking, right? It can be also like you're experiencing the fact that you're struggling with not having the resources that you had before, but also just feeling really down about not being able to recover. So too little resilience can lead to irritability, sleeplessness, feeling downtrodden, feeling demoralized, right? And so, hi B. I'm filming a video. You want to come say hi? Hey, B.
Hello.
I'm talking about resilience.
That's crazy.
Do you have any thoughts about resilience?
I don't know. It's really big, kind of.
Well, I'm talking about how resilience is your bounce back factor. And like, why do you think it might be that that is a concept that previously has had really positive connotations, but in the last number of years, people see resilience negatively?
People see resilience negatively?
Yeah.
I think people are really depressed because, like, they're expected to endure things, but there's no reward at the end of that. Think about, like, retirement, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to basically go through, like, life, working a job, and, like, showing resilience and, like, you know, taking care of other people or trying to take care of yourself in a world which is like actively trying to work against you because capitalism needs somebody to be at the bottom in order for there to be somebody at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And you're expected to do that. And then at the end, the reward is like, oh, well, now you get to retire. If you're resilient, you get to retire. But that's not actually the case. Retirement keeps getting pushed back. Cost of living only goes up. It never goes down, you know? And so it's like there's no reward for that resilience. So it's really just more seen as suffering, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just kind of like endless suffering. And then also think about like the pandemic, like that was such an incredibly stressful time for people that I don't feel like they're kind of fatigued from having to like be resilient.
So that's one of the things that I want to get to your first point in a minute, because I think that's a good segue into the next thing I was going to talk about. But I was talking about when you have too little resilience to begin with, it feels like once you've had an adverse event that you have to recover from, like illness or injury or like, you know, a natural disaster, that it requires a certain amount of energy to jumpstart your recovery. And when people are already so depleted, they don't have the reserves to jumpstart a recovery, right? So that they then experience the kind of emotional fallout of not having the resilience to recover, right? It's demoralizing, it's depressing, it's anxiety inducing, and it creates like a cycle, right?
Yeah, like I'm going into college, or I'm kind of in college, but I'm trying to get to a 4-year college. Once I do that, like I want to go to law school, and after that, it's like I get a job. No point there is there a point where it's like that's all basically just like I have to endure that over, and then I do another thing, and then I do another thing. There's like no light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like even because the like American dream is like you get an education, you get a well-paying job, everything's great, but that's not actually true because jobs are like really hard. I don't know if you guys knew that, and so it's like you go through like education, I'm strapped with debt. And then I go into a job where, like, I'm probably not going to be able to make money for the first, like, 8 years, you know? And then from there, it's like, well, then I'm paying off the debt that I've accumulated over those years because interest is, like, real and, like, awful. And, like, for some reason, that's, like, the system we've set up. Hi, doggy. My dog's here.
I guess, not to interrupt you, but, like, I guess one of the things that I'm hearing you say is that having resilience just means that you can keep plugging along and not that you have an increased quality of life because of it. It's just resilience to get back to the like barely functioning and being just being able to endure the grind versus having a higher quality of life, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the ways. Okay, so not to segue into what I was about to talk about, but like when you have low resilience, It's important to build resilience into your design. It's important to build resilience as a mindset into your thinking and your thought processes, but you can't change the whole system that you're in to be more resilient, right? So what we're experiencing now, I think, is a system that lacks resilience, and that tears all of us down, right? And that makes it harder. If the system is just grinding and grinding and grinding on us, we can't escape it. How do we recover? He's going to jump up. I know. Come on, buddy. Okay, so thanks, B. I'll let you, you can stay and talk if you want, but also I know you want to go get your lunch.
Well, actually, I was going to take a shower.
Okay, well, I'm not going to put that in the video. Okay, okay, thanks, B. I don't want to keep you. If you want to come back and chat, that's fine, but you don't have to. I'm gonna talk about consequences of high resilience, which I think you touched on. So I think it's a good segue. Okay, so part of the reason that permaculture systems have stressed this need to build resilience into the system is so that we don't struggle, so that we have that bounce back factor, and we have designed a system that anticipates needing to recover from adversity. And that way, we don't have too low of a resilience in our design, and we're not constantly having this tug and pull and stress of needing to summon up the energy to rebound from adversity. So why would too much resilience be a negative? And this is where, B talked about this a little bit. I want to get into what's happened the last number of years, where resilience has been this term we have tossed about, like, oh, you're so resilient. Oh, you're just really enduring all of this trauma. You're enduring all of this hardship and adversity, and you're just so resilient. That term has really taken on a negative connotation for especially vulnerable communities that are overburdened with those kind of adverse events and adverse circumstances that I was talking about earlier. When you have a high level of resilience, you continue to rebound over and over and over from event after event after event, after trauma after trauma after trauma. And so what happens when you have a really high level of resilience is that trauma and adversity becomes normalized, and you are asked to absorb it repeatedly because people see you still functioning well, even though you are inundated with all of these hardships. And I think that's where it's a little different than the permaculture concept of resilience in our systems that we're designing. I'm trying to keep my dog from wiggling the camera. I'm really sorry, you guys. So when we're talking about communities, when we're talking about individuals, and we're talking about economic and political situations and health crises and weather events that just bam, totally pummel communities and individuals. And we see people bouncing back over and over and over again. And we tell them, you're so resilient, you're so strong. Like, oh my gosh, you are just weathering all of these storms. It's great that people are not demoralized to the point of being non-functional and completely decompensating. It's great that people have the inner strength, but it normalizes trauma. It normalizes adversity. It communicates that we can just keep dumping on these people and these communities because look, they recover every time. They come back to work every time. They deal with the loss of their loved ones from a global pandemic. They deal with the average household expenses having gone up $11,000. All of without an increase in pay. They deal with all of these things that are just hitting them, and they still show up to work, and they still grind. They still do all the things they need to do. They still keep weathering the storm. And so because of that, the term resilience has really taken on a negative connotation. Stop telling us how brave we are, how strong we are for enduring all of these things we never should have had to endure in the first place. So that's why I think it's really important for those of us in permaculture to have some intersectionality to our discourse and understand that resilience can be seen as a real positive in terms of the way that we design our gardens, but it can have really negative connotations when you are looking at people, individuals, and you're looking at communities that have just endured exponentially more adversity than they should. And that is because the overall system is not designed for resilience. Or maybe it's designed with the expectation that people will have an overabundance of resilience and they can just keep absorbing whatever is thrown at them. And that's not how we're meant to live, right? So I think that when we're talking about resilience, I know I personally have pulled back from using that term so much because I think it feels crappy to people who are told over and over, you need resilience, you need to be stronger, you need to keep shouldering more and more, you need to keep recovering quicker from all of these things that are happening to you that are really devastating. And, don't take time to process, don't take time to be angry, don't take time to grieve, just bounce back and keep going. And that can be really harmful to tell people that. And so I've really started to shy away from using the term resilience, even though I think it is such an important concept in permaculture design, because definitions change, meanings change, nuance is something that we always need to be aware of. I'm really shying away from using resilience as a term, even though I know it is such a key concept in permaculture. I'm trying more to focus on abundance as a concept that we need to put to the forefront. And the reason for that is that, we in permaculture should be expecting so much more than just designing for adverse events where people are coming back up to this level here after they're getting beat down over and over and over again by a larger system that anticipates that they can absorb exploitation after harm, after exploitation, after harm, and then just keep going back up here and keep chugging along. When what we really want in permaculture is to get to up here, abundance, right? We don't want people to keep getting hit this, we want this up here. And our system has to include the design for abundance for all people from the get-go, not just resilience, not just oscillating back and forth between getting hit down and bouncing back, but actually having the goal be up here where we are ascendant in the way that we are living, right? We are increasing the amount of relaxation time, the amount of rest time, the amount of time to devote to culture and to devote to community and relationships. And we are having an increased quality of life, not just shooting for right here, but shooting for something much better. And I think what people are seeing in our culture right now is that they're doing everything they can just to recover, just to have the resiliency to get back to their baseline, such that they're never really able to actively engage with, or would like to engage with, but the system is holding them back from engaging with the process of working toward abundance. And so when we're talking in permaculture about what our systems need to give us, what our community design, what our socioeconomic designs, what our political designs are, what are the ways we have relationships with each other, relationships with the planet, what that design is. I think it's so important to stress abundance, because we don't get to abundance without having resilience, but this hyper focus on resilience has made communities, especially vulnerable communities, especially over the last, several years, 8 years, those communities have really felt manipulated and have felt discouraged by being told over and over, you're so resilient, you're so resilient. Keep being resilient, keep absorbing everything we throw at you. And definitely what we're not going to give you, what we're not going to empower you to have, what we're not going to design into the system is for you to have an increased quality of life, to have increased rest, to have prosperity and hope for the future and hope for your children. We just want you to keep bouncing back so that you can keep contributing to the status quo. And I think that we need to stop having that message and perpetuating that message. So I'm not saying you have to stop using the term resilience. I'm not saying that it is something that is inherently negative. I'm saying that there are very valid reasons why people don't like being told that they're resilient. They don't like being told that that's what they should plan for and expect, because we deserve a lot more. And so let's be conscious in our permaculture design of how we get to abundance, how we think about and plan for an improvement in the quality of life for everybody, while also thinking about how we help people recover from adversity at the same time, because those things really need to be completely linked. They need to be absolutely tied together. We can't really have one without the other. And I think that we need to communicate to people that they deserve the people care, they deserve the fair share aspects that help get them up to abundance, help all of our communities come up to abundance, instead of just that returning to the baseline. So thanks again for watching today. I hope that you're able to not only plan for resilience, but also for abundance. And if you are somebody who's been told over and over and over again that, wow, you're so resilient, wow, just keep, I know that you can take it. I know that you can handle one more thing. I know I can just heap some more on your shoulders because you recover every time. I hope that that cycle stops for you. I hope that you get to a place where you don't have to be the resilient one, where you don't have to rely on your ability to bounce back, where you can just get to a point where you have rest and not just recovery, but increase in quality of life. So thanks again for watching. I'll be back real soon. Hopefully from my garden. Okay, bye.
Can we please talk about how the need to be resilient is often due to systemic issues? Read imperialism, capitalism, and/or white supremacy. Yes, resilience is psychologically important. And so is dismantling systems that require people to be so in the face of adversity and tragedy. I do believe that resilience as a psychological tool is important, but I just wonder, what if? What if equitable, just, inclusive systems existed? What if we honored lives with dignity? What if hierarchical structures of power were dismantled? I've used resilient to describe people I admire, focusing on the comeback rather than questioning the need for resilience. I've also heard it used to describe people who are merely trying to survive, but many experiences requiring resilience shouldn't even happen in the first place. Like everything, there can be problematic narratives associated with resiliency. Push through, move on, fight, don't give up, prove. It often puts the onus on those being harmed to overcompensate and claw their way out of oppression so others can say, "Look, you made it." There are so many ways we use resiliency as an excuse to dismiss the extent or the root of the harm. Resiliency is literally defined as the capacity to recover quickly, to bounce back. It's not a matter of if people and communities are resilient, it's wondering why they need to be.